Face Off Live. Congressman David Cicilline meets challenger Anthony Gemma. Now, your moderator for tonight's debate, WPRO News Director Bill Haberman.
Tomorrow night we'll hear from the Republicans who are running in the 2nd Congressional District, but tonight it is the Democrats seeking the 1st District nomination for Congress. We're joined by Congressman David Cicilline, seeking his 2nd term. He's a former mayor and state representative. Congressman, thanks for joining us. It's good to see you. We were joined as well by his Democratic challenger, Anthony Gemma, a well-known business executive in Rhode Island who ran for Congress in 2010. Mr. Gemma, thanks for coming in.
Thank you. Good
to see you back here. We're reunited from 2010. Before opening statements, I want to advise our listeners you can join 630 WPRO, WPRO personality staff and listeners for a live tweet chat during the debate by logging into 630WPRO.com and following the link to live chat or logging into your Twitter account. You can use hashtag WPRO debate. Again, hashtag WPRO debate, and you can use your Twitter account. And again, 630WPRO.com. Without further ado, let's get to it. By a coin flip, we arranged opening statements, and we're going to start this evening with Mr. Gemma.
Thank you very much. The intensity of the past 2 weeks has driven us away from the discussion of the major issues of our time. So for this debate and for the remainder of this campaign and through the general election, we must address those issues with clarity and focus. I have listened to Rhode Islanders all across the state on all economic and social lines. You're telling me that your elected representatives are talking, but not listening. You're telling me that your businesses are failing, your jobs are disappearing, your families are living day to day, and you're deeply concerned that you may be forced to leave the state of Rhode Island just to survive. Trust me, I can put myself in your shoes. I come from humble beginnings. I grew up in a 3-tenement home in Providence, the last of 9 children, in a large family without economic privilege. My father worried about his one-man business. He and my mother worried about putting food on our table. We faced desperate times, many times. At the age of 10, when I worked for my father's plumbing business, I put myself through college and law school and had to work full-time just to do so. I know how to build a small business. I grew my family's small plumbing business into a national success story and provided jobs for hundreds of Rhode Islanders. The marketing company I created has also grown significantly. The Gloria Gemma Breast Cancer Foundation, which I founded in honor of my mother, has helped tens of thousands of women with this disease. Sleepless nights come from struggling to make payrolls and putting together sound budgets, from wondering if well-paying, sustainable jobs will be there for my son and your children when they're ready to enter the workforce. Those sleepless nights are no stranger to me. These are the issues of great concern for Rhode Islanders and all Americans. These are the issues I'm prepared and willing to address tonight and in Washington as your congressman. But the overriding issue facing voters in September 11th primary is trust. Which of the 2 candidates can you trust? Which of us can you believe? Which of us is telling you the truth tonight?
Thank you, Mr. Gemma. Congressman Cicilline.
Thank you very much for hosting this debate. These are very hard times for our state. Many families are really hurting. Rhode Islanders are out of work, and for them and their families, this is devastating. Our state has been particularly hard hit by the housing crisis, and getting people back to work remains my top priority. Even with the terrible gridlock in Washington, I've spent the last 20 months doing everything I can to help get our economy back on track and to help families here in Rhode Island in any way that I can. Sometimes by solving individual problems facing a family or making resources available through things like the Senior Resources Fair, a housing assistance fair, a free tax clinic, and just tonight I delivered 7 medals to a war hero, Jason Siegel, who had lost those medals and some he hadn't received. Other times by working with our delegation to help bring tens of millions of dollars in federal funds to Rhode Island and working together with our great delegation to bring as many resources as we can back to our state. And sometimes fighting for legislation that I know will help get our economy back on track by reinvigorating manufacturing, rebuilding our state's infrastructure, and investing in small business and education. And at the same time, fighting to defend Medicare, Social Security, veterans benefits, and women's rights. This election has real consequences, both for our state and for our country. Republicans in Washington are fighting hard to go back to the policies that caused so many of the challenges we face today. We cannot go back to those policies. I want to thank your listeners for the privilege of being in this fight on their behalf, and I look forward to the discussion tonight.
Congressman, Mr. Gemma, thank you. First question to go to you, Congressman. Essentially, the crux of the campaign, your detractors, the charges very well, that you've been accused of misstating the nature of the finances that were left for the next administration, and now in the latter hours of the latter period of the campaign, allegations of voter fraud. I mean, essentially, your critics are saying that you lied and that you're an elections cheat. What do you say to that?
Well, I've talked a lot about the Providence finances, and I've acknowledged that, I was overly optimistic in talking about the finances of the city, and I recognize that I'm kind of a half glass full kind of person, which you sort of have to be when you're the mayor of a city. And I recognize I should not have used the words excellent financial condition. And but I also think it's important to remind people what I inherited when I took office and the work that we did in those 8 years. And it obviously wasn't work of myself alone. It was a great team.
But people have said you lied. I mean, there's a difference between misstating and lied, that you went out of your way in 2010. So.
Yeah, no, I think I've talked about this a lot. I acknowledge that I was really looking at kind of where we had come from when I took office. I inherited a $59 million budget gap, a $216 million structural deficit, a city government that was described as an ongoing criminal enterprise, a city where crime was on the increase, where nobody shared in their health care costs, where colleges and universities didn't contribute. And we went to work, and we achieved a lot in those 8 years, and I talked a lot about kind of the progress we made. I didn't talk enough about the challenges that were on the horizon and the cuts that the state made to the cities and towns, particularly to Providence, where...
You say you knowingly didn't deceive the voters of the state.
Absolutely correct. But again, talking about the work that we did and the work that we accomplished and where we came from, but recognizing that there were big challenges on the horizon. When $41 million is cut from the city, that has to be absorbed, and that was every city and town had huge cuts, but nobody to the magnitude of Providence. But I recognize, look, I'm responsible for every decision I made. I accept responsibility for the language I used, but I think voters, in fairness, will look at what we got done in those 8 years and where I brought the city and my team brought the city. When I took office, nobody shared in healthcare costs. We negotiated so that everyone now shares in the healthcare costs. When I took office, no private college and universities made a financial contribution to the city. They now all do. When I took office, the pension system wasn't funded, and we properly funded.
Thank you, Congressman. Okay. Mr. Gemma.
When you think about and I called it in the last debate, mayoral malpractice. That's really what's happened here. The mayor, a current congressman now, when you go back and think about how it happened, not only did he misspeak and he claims that he used the wrong word, but the fact of the matter is that he locked out the city auditor. So why would you lock out the city auditor when the auditor needs to file for a freedom of information request to get do the very job that he was supposed to do when you're not trying to hide something? Why would the new mayor calls it a Category 5 hurricane within a month and a half, where the report from the commission came out from Gary Sass and Ernest Del Monte, who said that there was misdeeds in Providence on how the current mayor's administration, the mayor's administration, current congressman, has handled or mishandled or mayoral malpractice. That's what it's about. And I believe that not only did he misstate the facts, but he also lied about them.
Congressman, that auditor issue has come up a lot.
That is absolutely false. The auditor was not locked out. And so that is absolutely untrue. And the reality is, when we absorbed $41 million in state cuts, we had to make some decisions about how we would absorb those cuts. And, this is a challenge that every community was facing because of a policy that cut substantially aid to cities and towns. And we navigated through that, making a decision not to raise taxes because Providence residents were being crushed in this recession. And, that continues to be the problem, which is why what I think we have to focus on is how do we get Rhode Islanders back to work? How do we build an economy, as the president said, an economy built to last? I serve on the Small Business Committee in the House. Part of the work has been how do we help small businesses grow? How do we reinvigorate American manufacturing? How do we grow the tax base? And how do we rebuild the infrastructure of our cities? And so, getting people back to work is obviously a key strategy. What's very important is when the decisions that were made to how to navigate through that $41 million cut, we believe, I believe the council believed that raising taxes was not an option.
I'm sure we'll come back to it. The question will shift to Mr. Gemma now. Mr. Gemma, two consecutive campaign's now 2010, 2012. You started your campaign with the loftiest of goals, and we've seen two campaigns that have ended in negative attacks against Congressman Cicilline, most notably the voter fraud allegations. What would you say to your critics who say that this is really, you say you're not a politician, you're a businessman, but you certainly sound like a politician. You sound like a desperate politician.
Yeah, I would say this, that when you think about the campaign and you think about who I am as a person, I think that my record speaks for itself. I am a strong advocate in the community. I've done some significant things for the community. I've built significant businesses. Am I an intense business person? Yes. Am I intense when I advocate for what I feel and those I feel that are right? Yes. My intent is not to be negative. And actually, anyone that knows me knows I'm anything but negative. And in this situation, when you look at things I've done throughout my whole life, it's all been positive. So I began both campaigns with attempting to be positive, but in doing so, we did uncover this voter fraud issue, which led me to reassess our ability to win with the voter fraud that we felt was going to be in place based on the facts that we were presented, which led me to the investigation. So I don't believe that telling the truth, and telling the truth is negative. It can never be considered negative when you're telling the truth. How zealous I advocate for the truth is really what people should be looking for, because they know that in the face of adversity, I will stand up and speak the truth. It doesn't matter who it is.
So it's not like an 11th hour ploy. It's hardly, what you're saying, not a campaign ploy. This is you feel that they're trying to steal the election. Is that what you feel?
It's hardly a ploy, and people that are listening now, and maybe the people that are viewing this online, should know that I'm the candidate they can trust. I'm the Democrat they can trust to move our state and our nation forward, to do the right thing, and to advocate very zealously for the people of Rhode Island.
Congressman?
Look, there are 60,000 Rhode Islanders out of work, tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders who are underwater in their homes, and we have an economy that has either the second or third highest unemployment rate in the country, depending on what week it is. And I think what voters are interested in is, what are your ideas about how to fix that? And I think the baseless attack that Mr. Gemma has made in connection with voter fraud was exactly that. It was baseless. It was a last-ditch effort to help a desperate campaign, and I think voters deserve better than that. This is an important election. We're fighting against a set of Republicans in Washington that aren't playing. They're trying to give big tax cuts to millionaires and billionaires at the expense of the middle class. They're trying to continue $40 billion over the next decade in subsidies to big oil. They're trying to end the guarantee of Medicare and turn it into a voucher, which will be terrible for seniors. And they want to know how we're going to work to get our economy back on track. And I think, I throughout this campaign have focused on both the work that I've done, the ideas that I have about how we can fix our economy, how we can get people to work, how we can rebuild.
Congressman says it's a baseless attack, and we should be focusing on those issues.
Yeah, I would say this, that these allegations are hardly a baseless attack. When you look at the facts are very simply state this. Based on the information that I was presented, I hired a company called TRP. There are 3 former state troopers, highly decorated, have 70 years experience. From there, I hired former Attorney General James O'Neill. And from the information that we gather, we give our information both to the FBI and the state police. Anyone thinking that I would put my integrity on the line to think about these allegations as being baseless, they should just look at the whole facts and know that what's coming, if I were people, I'd be a little bit concerned, because this is very important to me. It's very important to the voters of Rhode Island. And when this page in history is closed in Rhode Island, I believe that voting will never be the same, and we've made positive strides to make a better Rhode Island and a better future for Rhode Island.
Let's be clear. Mr. Gemma had a press conference, and the week before the press conference, I'm going to ask the next, because
it's going to be related. An ally of yours, Speaker Fox, was on the from the convention, was on the WPR Morning News, suggesting that he worries about that the tone of this campaign is going to end up costing the Democrats the 1st District seat. I mean, Colonel Doherty. Is Colonel Doherty ultimately the winner out of all of this? I mean, are you concerned about this?
Look, I think it is very important that voters understand what's at stake in this election. And the reason that I have focused on the issues in this campaign is because what the Republicans are fighting for in Washington is not good for Rhode Island. It's not good for our country. They're fighting for economic policies that give people at the very top gigantic tax breaks with the expectation that will trickle down to the rest of us and create jobs. That is a failed economic policy. That's what President Bush proposed. We had the worst job loss, the worst job growth
but
in
aren't by
6 years.
tearing each other apart,
Well,
leading to
I
the
don't think,
election of a Republican?
again, you've seen me in this campaign talk about the issues, talk about what the work that I've done to get this economy in Rhode Island back on track, to reinvigorate American manufacturing, to invest in rebuilding the infrastructure of our country, to protect investments in education. Those are the issues that matter to Rhode Islanders. And I agree, the Democratic nominee is going to be in a fight with the Republican nominee in this race, and it's going to matter a lot that people focus on what's at stake here. These, I've been there for 20 months. These Republicans aren't kidding. They're serious about trying to fundamentally change the kind of America that we all want, where hard work is rewarded, where people are responsible, where you have a fair shot at the American dream. That's really under threat right now. And so this is an opportunity to make the case to the Rhode Island community, to our constituents, that this is a really important election with consequences. I have remained focused on the issues that are important to Rhode Island. I'm going to continue to do that because there's a lot at stake for our state and for our country.
Mr. Gemma, what is your response to this? I mean, are you prepared to lose this seat through your attacks on Congressman Cicilline, to lose this seat for the Democrats?
I'm not going to lose the seat. We're actually going to win this primary, and I'm going to go on to beat Brendan Doherty, which really is the issue. Those that are listening, they have a choice. You see, the Republicans and Democrats have a different vision for America. And if you believe in the Republican vision for America, you should go down that road, and you should probably vote for Brendan Doherty in the general election. If you believe in the Democratic vision for America, as I do, you should vote for me in this Democratic primary that's coming up, because I am the person and the candidate, the Democratic candidate that you can trust, that tells the truth, that will beat Brendan Doherty in the general election. David Cicilline will lose the seat to Brendan Doherty. The facts bear that out. The PRI poll shows that David Cicilline is 15 points behind Brendan Doherty. And then with the information now, the latest poll, it shows that my voters, 52% of them, will go to Brendan Doherty. David Cicilline will lose the seat. So those that are listening should make an informed decision as to who they want to represent them in Congress. If they want a Democrat, they have to be thinking about the general election and who can beat Brendan Doherty. That is at issue.
If you do not prevail 1 week today, will you vote for David Cicilline?
I will not vote. I cannot, in good conscience, knowing what I know, back David Cicilline. I will not do it.
Congressman.
What's the
about last minute?
Look, this, as I said, the Republicans in Washington aren't playing. I hope to have the privilege of being the Democratic nominee, and if so, I'm going to beat the Republican nominee. This is an election where it will be very clear what the Republicans are fighting for in Washington, what we're fighting for, and there is no question that 2 more years of John Boehner and Eric Cantor and the radical Republican agenda is not good for our state. I've seen up close what the Republicans are trying to do, and while I have great frustration with some of the things that Mr. Gemma has done in this campaign, it is too important that we elect a Democrat to the seat. I will vote for the entire Democratic ticket.
Will you vote for Anthony Gemma?
Yes.
You will vote
I will vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is, because it is too important. We cannot allow the Republicans to stay in power and proceed in an agenda which is bad for Rhode Island and bad for our country. Okay. It's not about me. It's putting aside your personal beliefs, but doing what's right for Rhode Island.
I'm going to move on to Mr. Gemma. You spoke about an issue of trust, and I wanted to ask you, Mr. Gemma, this issue of your Twitter followers. 630WPRO.com did a breakdown with statuspeople.com, and you have many followers on Twitter, more than I think, according to this breakdown in mid-August, than even Mitt Romney does. And according to this statuspeople.com, a large number of them are fake. According to what we put together, 79% are fake. Where Congressman Cicilline, you have much fewer followers, but only 2% are fake. Now, obviously, having fake followers on Twitter, even President Obama, according to this breakdown, is 41%. We even have them on our website. Doesn't change. You're the candidate. Let me read you something from smartpeople.com. They report, ultimately, if you're willing to lie about how many friends you have, you're not a trustworthy individual. Trust is an issue here. It doesn't seem to be a hill worth dying on. Why?
That's right. So when you go back and look at the analysis, we have chosen not to talk about strategy during this campaign. But I will say this. If you look at the analysis and the build-out of the Twitter followers that you guys keep referring to and the media keeps coming back to, at that time, I was not going to be probably running for Congress. Yes, I put myself out there and said I was considering it at the time. That's a very long time before I decided to run for Congress. With that said, as you know, I own a marketing company, and there's different things that you do in the marketing world to especially in the social media space, to ferret out what is right in marketing, what is wrong in marketing, what can work and what cannot work. If you go back and look historically at different tweets that I put out, different reshares and follows, there's a system, if you will, and I'm not, it's a fact that we're trying to figure out what works and what doesn't work. There are things that we put out that will get retweets and likes and shares that have no bearing. They're just. So
you're saying you're not trying to pump yourself up. It's not an exercise in ego to say, well, I've got so many followers.
This has zero to do with running for politics. That build-out has nothing to do with running for office.
Okay. Congressman Cicilline, your thoughts?
I don't know what strategy, I've never heard of a strategy of lying. So I do think it's strange to have, and then refuse to explain why you have all these make-believe followers. I don't know what the value of it is. I don't understand why people would make up followers, but I think it's odd. And I think what's really peculiar is that, lots of people have asked about it, and Mr. Gemma says we're not going to discuss strategy. I don't know what that means. But, I think what matters, again, is who's going to go to Washington and fight hard for Rhode Islanders and who has a clear idea of what we need to do to get people back to work, to reinvigorate our economy, who has the skill and the ability and the fortitude to fight and stand up for Rhode Island's working families, and who's done that and who has the big ideas. I think this is a distraction, but I do think it's sort of odd to have make-believe followers.
Mr. Gemma?
Well, Mr. Cicilline keeps coming back to what we can do moving forward, and what he's not talking about is the fact that I'm the only candidate that has actually created jobs in the private sector. I'm the only candidate with an actual written plan to move our state and our nation forward. And if we, I would love to get to the substantive discussion of this debate, because that's what your listeners really want to hear now. We're past all of this bickering, but I tell you this: I will stand up for what's right. Those that are listening know that to pull a press conference like we did, to call out a current seated congressman on voter fraud is not very easy to do. But I will do it based on telling the truth. Since when is telling the truth anything other than the right thing to do? It is the most democratic thing you can ever do, to tell the truth and stand up for what's right. That's what that's what the people that are listening and watching now really want. And that's what they're asking for from the current congressman. And that's what they're lacking. That's why Mr. Doherty made integrity the cornerstone of his campaign when he knew he was just going to be running against David Cicilline.
Thank you, Mr. Gemma. You're listening to the WPRO primary debates, which are brought to you without interruption by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. You are listening to the debate between the Democrats who are seeking the first congressional seat nomination, the incumbent Democratic Congressman David Cicilline, his challenger Anthony Gemma.
We should have coffee instead of water.
Continue on, perhaps coffee instead of water. It would be very good, especially for those of us who work the early morning shift like myself. We took listener questions. We got a lot of questions. We thank everybody who submitted our listener questions through 630wpro.com, and we're going to question for both gentlemen, and they relate to jobs. First, we'll start with Congressman Cicilline. Congressman, and this is, by the way, from Ryan Malloy, who's from Pawtucket, who says, Congressman, during your first run in House District 1, you campaigned on jobs and a Made in America bill, neither of which have bared fruits. What have you done to create jobs as a member of Congress? And are you actually working on this bill, or is this a campaign rhetoric ploy to seek re-election?
No, actually, this bill was one of the first things I introduced, and it's part of a larger Make It in America agenda, which is part of an agenda put together by members of the House on the Democratic side, led by our minority whip, Steny Hoyer. And the Make It in America agenda made it into part of that agenda. It includes the development of a national manufacturing strategy. My bill that I introduced, Sheldon introduced it on the Senate side, to end tax breaks that companies receive that ship American jobs overseas. Another bill that I co-sponsored to end the manipulation of their currency by the Chinese that provide a really unfair advantage to Chinese manufacturers. Some economists say that just fixing that by leveling the playing field could create between 500,000 and 2 million jobs. So the Make in America block grant and Make in America agenda is really about reinvigorating American manufacturing, which is very important to Rhode Island. We have a great manufacturing base, We have some companies that are bringing stuff back that was overseas because customers are unhappy with the timeliness of delivery or the quality of goods. So that's a really important initiative. We also have, I think, been successful as a delegation in bringing resources back to Rhode Island to invest in infrastructure. We've brought grants back that relate to education and healthcare, all of those which produce jobs. But I also serve on the Small Business Committee, and a part of my work there has been how do we ease the regulatory process? How do we ensure that capital is available for small business? We reauthorized the SBIR program. They included a manufacturing amendment, was something I proposed in the committee so that we can really, again, highlight the importance of investing in manufacturing. And so this is, there's not one silver bullet for this. It's really about investing in infrastructure, education, innovation, job training, small business. All those things are things that I've worked on since I've gotten to Washington.
Mr. Gemma.
Well, I think this is probably the most important part of this debate. It's the most important discussion that has to be had. And there's a reason that the tagline of my campaign, if you will, is "It's about jobs," because it is all about jobs. And when you think of FDR, when he dealt with the vast unemployment of his day as the president, and you fast forward to now, we're dealing with much of the same issues that he did. And the jobs plan that I put forth, actually taking an infrastructure job bank and other programs from the federal government, and driving it down. There are 8 different pillars in which I'm going to rebuild jobs. This campaign is about who you trust can create jobs. I'm a proven job creator. I've been a job creator my entire adult life, and both Mr. Cicilline and Mr. Doherty have not created a single job, and that's important. I've had to deal with payroll. We've had to, the stress of having to lay people off in a bad economy. So jobs is very important. But of the pillars that are out there, health and wellness, education, I'm sure we're going to get back to
We'll get back to it, Congressman Cicilline.
Well, it's certainly not true that I haven't created jobs. And if you look at the work that we've done as a delegation and the resources that it's brought to Rhode Island, the jobs that have come from that, it's pretty obvious. But look, we have lots of work to do. We have, as I said, either the second or third highest unemployment in the country, and we have to be focused like a laser on everything that we can do to create jobs. And I think the president has set forth in the American Jobs Act a good plan, a good framework to do that, investing in things that have historically made our economy strong. Small business, infrastructure, education, job training. I appreciate Mr. Gemma's support of the Infrastructure Bank. That's a bill I've co-sponsored. It's a new kind of modern-day version of the WPA to rebuild the infrastructure of our country. We have a deteriorating infrastructure. It will put people back to work right away. It will help to build a platform for our economy so we can move goods, services, and information in the 21st century to compete successfully. And investing in small business, being sure that small business has access to capital, has access to a trained workforce. We have a real challenge around with the skills gap. That is, workers who don't have the skills necessary for the jobs that are available. So workforce development and job training.
Thank you, Congressman. We're going to continue. It's going to come. This question is from Judith Bruzzese, I believe. She lives in East Greenwich. She's a listener, obviously not in the district. Mr. Gemma, your slogan for your campaign is, as you mentioned, it is all about jobs. Give us specifics as to what legislation you intend to introduce in the House if you're elected that will bring jobs to Rhode Island.
Okay, so I'm going to start with this. I am positive I can create jobs for Rhode Island. To that extent, I am promising 10,000 jobs in Rhode Island in 5 years. I've identified over 41,000 jobs that can be created here in the state of Rhode Island. I believe that with the job plan that I've created, which is 28 pages and it's available at gemmaforcongress.com on the website, we are going to create about 25,000 to 35,000 jobs. There's not another candidate in this race that is being as bold as me to promise 10,000 jobs in 5 years to the state of Rhode Island. How the job plan works is, and it does assume there's 2 assumptions. If there's complete congressional gridlock in Washington and I'm in the minority party as a freshman congressman, I've come up with other ways to work around congressional gridlock. So we're not sitting here in 2 years saying we haven't created jobs. I have the ability, and we've identified funding sources, both private and foundational money, that can create the minimum of 10,000 jobs. The pillars in which we create the jobs are this. There's health and wellness. There's education. There's the advanced manufacturing. Travel and tourism, which I would love to bring a cruise ship port here to Rhode Island. That's federal legislation that will make that happen. There's infrastructure. There's the marine industry, distribution industry. So very specific, there are areas in which I've identified. I've also identified those people that are unemployed, many of them in the construction industry. 40,000 people have been unemployed in the last decade in the manufacturing space. So we have to begin by revving up the engine of Rhode Island and specifically taken federal legislation to make it happen. It's getting our men and women back to work. We are blue-collar men and women, by and large. We fix things with our hands. That's what my job plan does. It starts with the people that we know we can get back to work based on the people that are ready, willing, and able to work right now.
Congressman?
I've introduced legislation that addresses a couple of these issues. The first is the Make It in America block grant, which we've already discussed. I'm very proud that the Brookings Institute just did an analysis of that and said it was worthy of serious consideration. So I think, again, that's a real issue that can help grow jobs in Rhode Island. It's specifically targeted to states that have had a manufacturing job loss. We have great assets here, great workforce, great facilities, and a great manufacturing history. So I think that bill and all of the bills in the Make It in America agenda can really help to grow jobs in Rhode Island. The Infrastructure Bank, again, is a way to invest in rebuilding our roads, bridges, ports, transit systems. We've had some success in bringing federal money to do that, but the Infrastructure Bank will be a new public-private partnership to really rebuild our country. I think also small business is the economic engine of our state. I serve on the Small Business Committee, making sure that capital is available for small business, make sure they can navigate through the regulatory process, making sure that we focus on the SBIR, which is the Small Business Innovation and Research Loan Program. Job training and workforce development are key, again, so we have a trained workforce capable to take the jobs.
Thank you, Congressman. Mr. Gemma.
I'm glad that Mr. Cicilline brings up the his Made in America block grant, because I too have read the Brookings Institute report, and I want to read a line from that report. It says the program encourages businesses to use funds in ways that work for them and come with relatively few federal restrictions regarding the proper use of those dollars. Now, I don't know if you want to harken back to the PEDP, which in my opinion, has been the current congressman's, at the time he was the mayor, slush fund. We're continually finding problems with the PEDP. Over $2 million has been written off in the PEDP, and I'm sure there's more to come, and that's unfortunate. So I worry that this Made in America block grant draws parallels with the PEDP, which is a failed program at this point that was directly run by the mayor. Current Congressman.
We thank our listeners for those questions, again, focusing on jobs as much. We continue on with the questions for Congressman Cicilline. There's much made on our airwaves since last week's debate, and there was, again, on the op-ed page in the Providence Journal, again, you had an inability to use a word to describe the state of the finances, which you left for Mayor Taveras. Obviously, they were not excellent. You've had a week to think about it. Is there a word that you can describe and an explanation? Please do. Because everybody...
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've thought a lot about this. I think there's no question if I were to do it today, I would describe the city as improved but threatened. Improved from...
2 words, but...
It's 2. I think that captures, we did a lot to respond to the challenges, both in funding the pension system and in making sure people share in their health care costs and negotiating the first ever in the city's history pilot payments from colleges and universities, and made all kinds of reforms in government. But it's clearly threatened by what was on the horizon.
That's a long way from the Category 5 hurricane that...
No, I think threatened. I think threatened captures that the cuts that the state made some difficult choices for the city. So I think, I'd say improved but threatened. If you made me pick one word, I would say threatened.
Mr. Jim.
I think threatened is quite overly optimistic. And when you go back and again look at the facts in the city of Providence, and you look at, and those that are listening now know this, the city of Providence is in absolute shambles right now. The roads are bad. The taxes are amongst the highest tax rate in the entire country. The car taxes are the same. And there's really 3 ingredients that go into a successful, whether it's a business, municipal government, state government, or federal government. It's leadership, it's vision, and a plan. In Mr. Cicilline's situation, he lacked all 3. It was bound to be a failure, and the failure was exposed when he left office.
Congressman?
I would strongly disagree that the city of Providence is in shambles. The capital city is a great city with a great mayor. It's recognized around the country as one of the most creative, wonderful cities in America. It faces great challenges. The mayor has done a spectacular job in addressing those challenges. But this is a great city with wonderful neighborhoods, wonderful people, with a growing technology community, with a growing knowledge district. It is a great capital city of our state, and while it faces challenges, I think it is unfair to call Providence in shambles.
So we're going to get it down on the record. Threatened is the word.
I think that's right.
Threatened is the word.
Okay,
yeah. That's good. Threatened is the word. Okay, fair enough. We'll move on. Question for Mr. Gemma. Again, when asked in the previous debate, much has been made of Mitt Romney, the Republican nominee, somewhat as critics would say, flexible positions on the issues, most notably abortion. You said your position changed a month before you formally declared your candidacy for the 2nd District. For those who would support choice, why would they not worry that you would have a similar epiphany upon assuming office and would become
Well, I actually look
against
at
abortion?
Thank you for your question. I really appreciate it, and it is an important issue. As listeners may know, that I am a Catholic. I take this decision, and it's probably the one that was most perplexing to me, even in 2010. I take my decision to change. It's very important to me, and it's important to the listeners and the constituents, as it should be. But I would say this: that based on the Republican attacks on women's rights, based on my ability to change my opinion based on information and facts, I would, if I were a listener and I were a constituent here, I would actually be encouraged by that, because it's not about being hard and fast. It's really about taking in information, making an informed decision, and then having the flexibility to be able to change that decision over time based on information and feelings and constituent feelings. And
that's an issue, though, Mr. Jem. People don't have a lot of flexibility on, it seems, anyway. I mean, you're either for or against, and vociferously so.
So I believe that is certainly a woman's right to choose. My decision may be something different, but I do believe that how I feel about it is it's a woman's right to choose. It's right to choose her what's happening in her body. So based on the attacks, I mean, if you think about the amount of attacks, it was repulsive to me, the amount of attacks that have come upon women's rights from the Republican Party over the last half a year, 3/4 of a year.
Congressman?
I'm very proud that I've enjoyed the endorsement of Planned Parenthood and NARAL. My position on this issue has been clear and unequivocal in protecting a woman's right to full reproductive health. And we're living in a time right now where women have been under attack by this Congress, whether it's on women's health, whether it's on women's access to contraceptives, whether it's on women's right to equal pay for equal work, or whether it's any number of issues. And I have always believed and continue to believe that we have to protect a woman's right to choose. I'm proud that the national organizations that care about this issue have enthusiastically endorsed me because they trust me on this issue. I haven't changed my position on it. I have a long and well-established record of protecting and fighting for women.
Mr. Jem?
When you look at my actions, certainly, hopefully, speak louder than my words. When my mom passed away of breast cancer, I founded the Gloria Jemer Breast Cancer Resource Foundation, and there can be no one that's much stronger of an advocate for women's rights than I am. I have advocated for women pretty much over a third of my adult life after what happened to my mother, and I will continue to do so, and I will do so as vigorously as anyone has ever done before for women, especially in Washington, as it is now necessary because of the attacks of the Republican Party.
Gotcha. Next question is for Congressman Cicilline. New ads running on a radio station. You ask people to put politics aside. Yet you've said the word tonight, the radical Republican agenda. If I were on the other side, I wouldn't want to be your political friend afterwards. And I mean, how do you reconcile both of those? Look, going to put politics aside, but yet the other guys are radicals, not to be trusted. We should
No, I didn't call them radicals. I said it's a radical agenda.
You said a radical agenda.
Exactly. And I've built relationships with some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. I formed something called the Common Ground Caucus to try to build relationships and work together. But the reality is there are big differences between what the Republicans in Washington, led by the Tea Party, are trying to do to our country. And they have an agenda which is really reflected in the Paul Ryan budget, passed by the Republicans in the House, that includes a gigantic tax cut for millionaires and billionaires, above and beyond the Bush tax cuts, $40 billion over the next decade in subsidies to big oil, ending the guarantee of Medicare and turning it into a voucher, slashing funding for education and infrastructure. So these are important differences, and I think I'm not personalizing it, but what I'm saying is what the Republican agenda is in Washington is not good for Rhode Island. It's not good for our country. It's premised on this idea that if you just let people hold on to more of their money, with these gigantic tax cuts, it will trickle down to the rest of us. They call them the job creators. Well, you know who the job creators are? It's middle-class families that have money in their pockets because they have a job and they buy the goods and services business produces. Those are the real job creators. And so what I'm fighting for and have been fighting for is how do we strengthen the middle class of our country? How do we create a tax policy and pass the Buffett rule so middle-class families are not paying a higher tax rate than millionaires and billionaires? How do we ensure that we invest in keeping American jobs here and not give tax breaks to companies that ship American jobs overseas? So again, there are big differences. This is an agenda which doesn't reflect, I think, American values of what we're trying to do here in Rhode Island or in our country. And I think voters have a right to know what's at stake, what the big differences are between the Tea Party-led Republicans in the Congress and what I've been fighting for and what we're fighting for in the Democratic caucus.
Mr. Chairman.
I'm going to try to, and I don't mean this in any derogatory way, try to simplify this as best I can, because as any constituent out there or listener is listening right now, they have to understand that there's going to be tremendous amounts of volumes of information coming at them. So in this situation, both Republicans and Democrats, in my opinion, and based on fact, agree on one thing. The deficit must be tackled, and it must be tackled in this next Congress. There's a Republican vision for America to make that happen, and there's a Democratic vision for America to make that happen. And I don't think that it's ever been clearer, probably certainly in the last 20 or 30 years, on how to make a decision moving forward. The Republicans agree that there should be a tax cuts for the wealthy and for business, but they also, in my opinion, are going to gut out Medicare and Social Security. That money will actually fund and pay down the deficit. The Democrats have a much more balanced approach, and the balanced approach is leaving Social Security and Medicare intact and sunsetting, or ending, if you will, many of the Bush tax cuts to fund the deficit. That's really where the decision point comes down. If you believe in the Republican vision for America, then that's one way. If you believe in the Democratic vision for America, that's another one.
Congressman.
Again, I think we have a responsibility to work with people on the other side of the aisle and try to develop some common ground, but we also have to be prepared to stand up and fight for the things that matter to our constituents and matter to our country. And so standing up to fight to preserve Medicare and Social Security, to protect investments in education and innovation and entrepreneurship and infrastructure that we know we need to invest in to grow our economy. And the Republicans have made a commitment. They won't even close some of these tax loopholes. And so every economist that's looked at this says we need to do two things: cut spending and generate revenues. It has to be a balanced approach. They've been resistant to that.
Thank you very much. You're listening again to the primary debates here on WPRO, brought to you without interruption by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. We're joined by Congressman David Cicilline and his challenger, Anthony Gemma. They're the Democratic candidates in the 1st Congressional District. Also, you can join WPRO personality, staff, and listeners. Live tweet chat taking place during the debate. You can log on 630WPRO.com. Your hashtag is WPRO debate. We've entered the part of the debate, which is our favorite part of the debate, where the candidates get to ask questions of themselves. By agreement, both campaigns have submitted questions for our review. We're asking both gentlemen to refrain from questions for personal attacks that are unverifiable during their questions, which you've agreed on. Before I do that, though, something that was fascinating that came out during the previous debate. Mr. Gemma, can you say anything positive about David Cicilline?
I think that David...
He said his necktie.
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. I was caught a little off guard.
There's no rules. We're not going to turn them. Let's just make it quick.
I'm going to go back to the fact that I am an intense person. I think David Cicilline is probably one of the hottest campaigners that I've ever met, and I think that I've seen him everywhere. I'm sure he sees me everywhere, and the tenacity in which he he runs for office is amazing to me.
Okay, good. Congressman Cicilline.
I will repeat what I said when I was asked the question first. I certainly admire and respect Mr. Gemma's work to honor his late mother.
Okay, let's move on to the first question. Mr. Gemma for Congressman Cicilline, sir. Go ahead.
A report commissioned by the City of Providence, authored by Gary Sash, and issued in April of 2011, found that the Cicilline administration did not recommend the difficult choices necessary to avert the fiscal crisis. The administration did not present a corrective action plan that could have minimized the pending financial meltdown that the city experienced. Furthermore, the city's financial challenges have made it more difficult to address because of the dysfunctional financial management, where requirements of the city charter were ignored, where unrealistic budgetary assumptions were presented, and where effective monitoring of the administration by the City Council made it difficult and thus lacking. Given these facts, Why should any voter send you back to Congress to do to America what you did to Providence?
Well, I think the voters should send me back to Congress because of the work that I have done and the work that I've done in Congress, and that I remain focused on how we rebuild the economy of our state, how we rebuild the economy of our country. I'm focused on how we get people back to work, how we invest in manufacturing and rebuilding the infrastructure of our country, fighting back against this extreme Republican agenda that wants to provide gigantic cuts for people at the very top, that wants to keep in place billions of dollars in subsidies for big oil and big agricultural corporations, and a tax code which has been unfair to the middle class. And look, I'm responsible for every decision I made in the 8 years I was mayor. I always made decisions that I thought were the right decisions for the residents of Providence, and as the mayor, you live with those decisions. And I made every decision believing it was in the best interest of the residents I served, and knowing that cities and towns in Rhode Island are hurting, and that we have the ability in Washington to do something to help Rhode Islanders if we focus on getting people back to work, passing the President's American Jobs Act, understanding we need to invest in education and infrastructure, understanding we need to change some policies that give an unfair advantage to companies to ship jobs overseas. These are urgent challenges that face our country, and I think my record of standing up and fighting for what we need to do here in Rhode Island, the services I've given to my constituents in solving individual cases, and the work I've done with our delegation to bring resources to Rhode Island, and my willingness to continue to work hard every single day for Rhode Island in Washington deserves my reelection.
What's your reply to that?
When you think about the mayor's current congressman, I keep saying it, his record, I think that his record speaks for itself. And when you listen to him talk, I mean, certainly he is zealous. He's a zealous advocate. He keeps coming back to the same message. The voters have a decision to make. Who can they trust? Who can they trust not only on who has the integrity to move our state and our nation forward? Who consistently talks about the issues, but who consistently talks about job creation, but yet the results have been lacking. So I think it's very important that the voters, constituents, are paying attention, and they have to make a decision, number one, on who they can trust. And then secondly, and probably most important, is who amongst the candidates can create jobs and get our men and women and boys and girls back to work once and for all and move our state forward, as opposed to being one of the highest unemployment rated states in the nation. We should be on the bottom of that list.
Final word, Mr. Cicilline.
Again, I think that voters will certainly address and think about the work that we did in 8 years I was mayor. As I said, we brought billions of dollars of new investment to the city. During those years, there were companies from Inquest to Altiris, United Natural Foods to G-Tech that we brought to Providence. I'm very proud that we had the lowest crime rate in 30 years during the time I was mayor, that we restored honesty and integrity to city government, reformed the police department. When I took office, the city government was described as an ongoing criminal enterprise, and we went to work to restore integrity. So I think, people will look at my record and look at what we got done in 8 years. But what this election's about is who's going to be the person in Washington who's going to keep standing up, effectively fighting for Rhode Island to get us back on the right track, to fight for the things that we need to do to get our economy moving again, who has the ideas and who has the skill and the ability to make those ideas a reality, and who's willing to stand up and fight to protect women, to protect manufacturing, to fight for investments in education infrastructure. That's what I've done.
The next question is
Yes.
yours for Mr. Gemma.
Mr. Gemma, why did you make a contribution, and in fact the maximum contribution, to Governor Don Carcieri, a Republican candidate for governor, half of it coming just 6 days before the 2006 election?
As you know, I was the president and CEO of a company at the time. I felt that Don Carcieri was a pro-business candidate, but I also have donated to many, many Democrats. So what continues to come up, and here we are in 2012, talking about a donation that I believe was made in 2006, if I'm not mistaken. So what should be looked at is my donations to the vast and many Democrats of our state. And if you go back, I don't think it's unheard of for people to donate periodically to the people on the other side of the aisle, especially when someone reaches out to you that may be a friend that's running a fundraiser, and you feel a sense of obligation to that friend. So that's there's many reasons for it, but those are some of them.
Your reply, Congressman?
No, I think who you give money to in elections matters. And, Mr. Gemma didn't vote in the Democratic primary in 2008, gave money to the Republican candidate for governor, and I think that's worth noting. I think it's really important. Governor Carcieri adopted a set of policies which really hurt cities and towns, policies which I think were not good for Rhode Island. I was an enthusiastic supporter of the Democratic nominee, Charlie Fogarty, and I think it's worth noting. It's a curious thing to me that someone would contribute to a Republican governor who's a Democrat and who believes in the values of our party. And that was a hotly contested race between Governor Carcieri and Charlie Fogarty. And I think it's worth noting.
Mr. Gemma, final word?
Well, when you think about it, I think that we have to look at donations not only from candidates, but probably to candidates. Mr. Cicilline's has donations from Bernie Madoff's top 2 lobbyists have donated, I believe, to the max to his campaign. Not only that, but he has taken money from big oil. He has taken money from the different prescription drug companies. And he also has taken money from big business. He talks about limiting the influence of money in Washington, and he talks about campaign finance reform. And this is another example where we should just be focused on not talking out of both sides of our mouth. But if we want to do it, let's make a pact to eliminate the PACs. I'm willing to give my PAC money back if Mr. Cicilline is willing to give his PAC money back.
PAC to take the PAC. You have the next question for Congressman.
This actually brings back a little bit of what we talked about, but it's a little slight variation. Since you never apologized for lying about Providence's economy in 2010, and instead apologized for only your poor choice of words, are you prepared tonight to apologize for driving Providence to the brink of bankruptcy and lying about it over and over again? And will you include in your apology, which I believe you already did, the most accurate word to describe Providence's economic condition?
I'm very proud of the work that we did as a team in the 8 years that I was mayor, and I've said repeatedly that the principal causes for the financial challenges the city faced were the very serious cuts that were made by the state. I think $41 million in those last years, the loss of federal stimulus funds, and a really, really deep recession. And I'm responsible for every decision we made in the budget process with the city council to navigate through those difficulties. I've acknowledged that I was overly optimistic in the way I talked about them, but I thought it was very, very important to protect the residents of Providence from a tax increase in that last year in particular. People were being hammered by this recession. The idea of what a lot of communities did was to raise car taxes or to raise property taxes. We didn't want to do that. I think it was the right decision then, in the hopes that some contingencies would happen that didn't happen. But I'm proud of the work we did as a team during those 8 years, and I think while people will evaluate the decisions we made, I know they're also going to evaluate the work we got done, and I think everyone will acknowledge, the governor has said this repeatedly, that those cuts that were done by the state, which to his credit, Governor Chafee has restored. He's also accelerated the school funding formula, which has helped Providence and all the communities. But when you're a mayor of a city, you make lots of decisions. I always made the decisions I thought were right. I've acknowledged on many occasions that I was too optimistic and I was looking too much back by the sort of the distance we traveled and not enough about what was on the horizon and the impact of those cuts and how it threatened the city. And I think people will judge it based on the totality of the work we did and the decisions I made.
Mr. Gemma, you're up.
I'm going to yield half my time back to the congressman because I'm going to re-ask the question. We're asking you if you would be prepared to apologize for lying. It's not about the word, and that's really what the wordsmithing of it all, I think that's really what's insulting to me as a constituent of yours and the constituents and the voters that are listening right now. It's not about the word. It's about the lie about the state of the finances of Providence. Are you willing to just apologize for the lie and not the word?
We'll use that as your reply, your last word, Congressman.
Again, I've talked a lot about this, and I have said repeatedly that I was too optimistic in the language I used. I'm responsible for every decision I made, and as I look back, I wish I had talked more about what was on the horizon, but I did not ever intend to lie or misrepresent. I talked about the work we had done, the road we had traveled, and again, this is work that was done by a team of great people who made tremendous improvements in the city of Providence, and they deserve credit for that as well.
You have a final question for Mr.
Sure.
Gemma.
Mr. Gemma, when you announced for Congress and when you ran the last time, you said you were a pro-life Democrat. You say you've changed your mind, but with the Tea Party trying to ban abortion, defund Planned Parenthood, and basically attack the rights of women, how can women trust you to be a leader on these issues?
I think here's a specific example of your actions speak louder than your words, and I'm going to go back to there's not probably a more zealous advocate for the rights of women, and again, the actions speak louder than words. When I founded the Gloria Gemma Breast Cancer Foundation and have been advocating incredibly for the women here in our state, and we've made and helped, the foundation is currently helping tens of thousands of women in our state, and I don't think there can be any more of a clear indication of how hard I will fight for women here in our state and our nation.
Congressman.
No, I just want to repeat. I mean, I feel very proud to have the endorsement of NARAL and of Planned Parenthood. You know, I've been fighting against Republicans in Washington who are attempting to defund Planned Parenthood or attempting to pass legislation that will make abortion more difficult for women to access, that are resisting efforts to make women safer by not strengthening the Violence Against Women Act, that are rejecting equal pay for equal work for women. And, you know, I think the national organizations that look at these issues look where I've stood for my whole public life. They know I've been a relentless and strong supporter for women. I'm proud of that. And I think, you know, their endorsement of me is further indication that they trust me on these issues.
Mr. Gemma.
You know, again, I'm going to reiterate that, you know, as far as the advocating for women, you know, I find it, you know, incredibly odd that people would think that I'm flip-flopping when I'm really not. I've been consistent. It's a woman's right to choose that is most important. I personally would choose something, you know, I would personally would choose pro-life, but I believe in a woman's right to make her own choice with her own body.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. The question and answer portion. We're going to move on to closing statements. Before we do that, I want to thank again both gentlemen for coming here, Mr. Gemma, Congressman Cicilline. Thank you as well to our managers, Cumulus Providence General Manager Barbara Haynes, WPRO Program Director Craig Schwab, our entire engineering staff led by our chief, Doug V. Egan. All of it participated, and 630WPR.com's Dee DeQuattro served as the producer of these debates. So with that, let's start the closing statements. You began first. Anthony Gemma, you make the first closing statement.
Thank you very much. The foundation upon which all democracies are built is the sacred trust that must be preserved between the people and their elected representatives. When that trust is violated by a representative who fails in his or her duties or lies to the people, it is the democracy itself that is threatened. Which of the candidates here tonight has violated that trust? Rhode Island must get back to work. America must get back to work. Which of the candidates here tonight do you trust to create jobs? Which of the candidates here tonight has created jobs? And which of the candidates has offered a fully detailed plan on how to create jobs in large numbers over the next 5 years and beyond? Medicare and Medicaid must be protected and preserved so that all of our seniors will never have to choose between food and medicine. Which of the candidates here tonight do you trust to protect our seniors? A woman's right to choose and health care must be protected and preserved without compromise. Which of the candidates tonight has the track record of helping tens of thousands of women receive health care in their darkest hours? Jobs, seniors, women, men, trust. When you go to the polls on September 11th, ask yourself which Democratic candidate has the experience, competence, and personal integrity that you can trust. Which of the candidates has never lied to you? Which of the candidates has a proven record to create jobs, defend seniors, and stand for women? Who do you trust to be your representative? I respectfully ask for your vote and your trust on September 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Gemma.
Thank you again
Cicilline.
for hosting this debate. People understand what's at stake in this election because our basic values are at stake. This is the measure of who we are and what kind of country we're trying to build. The president has it right when he says we have to do everything we can to make an America where hard work and responsibility are rewarded, where everyone has a fair shot and does their fair share. I've seen these Republicans close up. They're not kidding. Look at what they've tried to do over the last year and a half, and what's in their party platform. They want abortion to be legal. They want to defund Planned Parenthood and NPR. They want to undo reforms at Wall Street and eliminate a consumer protection agency and repeal healthcare reform. They want more tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires, keep tax breaks for companies that ship American jobs overseas, and they want to end the guarantee of Medicare and turn it into a voucher. I'm asking for your vote tonight on September 11th. None of the things that the Republicans are fighting for in Washington are good for Rhode Island, and they're not good for our country. We have brave men and women all over the world who are serving in uniform, and they're serving to protect us, to keep us safe, and to preserve American values. Let's honor their service by building a country where everyone has a fair shot and asking and achieving the American dream. That's what I've been fighting for since you sent me to Washington. I'm asking for your vote and promise to continue to fight every single day on your behalf. Thank you.
Congressman, thank you as well. Congressman David Cicilline. Anthony Gemmy, thank you for coming in tonight. The first of our primary debates. Again, this brought to you uninterrupted by Dunkin' Donuts. America runs on Dunkin'. We thank them for their support. Tomorrow night, we'll hear from the Republicans who are running for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District. Again, we will start at 6 o'clock. The format will be uninterrupted, and we invite you to join us as well as on 630WPRO.com for your reaction. My name is Bill Haberman, and we will speak to you tomorrow night at the same time as the primary debates continue.
WEAN FM Wakefield Peacedale.